Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Cyber PMM Podcast, the only show dedicated to helping cyber PMMs fight digital chaos, cut through the hype, and do more with less. Let's dive in. Hi, I'm your host, Dane DeCimino, and today we're diving into a topic that tends to get messy pretty quick, which is product launches. Now, some of you might be cringing just at the sound of the term. The fact is that most product launches fail. I looked at some research and there was one statistic that said 80% of launches fail. Then I saw another one that seemed more balanced that said about 40%. But even if it's somewhere in between, let's say 50 or 60%, launches are a serious challenge, especially for product marketers, because we are really the face of that launch, both internally and externally. So the other thing is that it disrupts our focus, right? Once we get hit with a huge launch, it disrupts other projects, it drains our energy, and we anticipate a certain date. And most of the time, those dates change, right? So we can't really rely all the time on the product and engineering launch date because, as we all know, that date will change, right? So when things don't go according to plan, it's not just our schedules that suffer, it's our credibility that gets tossed in the garbage by the organization. So why are product launches often rife with trouble? A few things. One is unclear messaging and differentiation. So if the product's value isn't communicated clearly, customers are going to lose interest pretty quick. And if we don't stand out, or if nobody's able to tell what's the difference between this and a key competitors, then really there's no impact in the market, right? It's a Me Too release that doesn't really change anything. Another couple of reasons why product launches fail more on the program management side is just the lack of a program manager or a project manager, somebody that's dedicated to coordinating the tasks and timelines, which PMMs, we often get bogged down in when there's not a program manager assigned. So there has to be somebody that is in those details. And then most importantly, probably, is no executive sponsor. If you don't have an upstairs backing from senior leadership for a launch that has everybody aligned and on the same page across product, engineering, marketing, sales, then getting resources to support your launch goals is going to be pretty much impossible, and you're going to fail. So having this support from top-level leadership makes a massive difference. So the second thing you have to do is define a launch tier. Now, I know if you're in a startup, this might sound overkill, but as your company gets more complex, launch tiers are critical because everybody's going to ask the question, is this even important? You have to recognize that not every launch demands the same effort. So you create launch tiers to categorize your launches. Let's start with tier one. These are your big strategic launches. You're probably only going to have one of these a year. You're only going to remember a few of these in your career. This is where you have to get involved super early. You should be at the strategic planning table, bringing market research and facts and market expertise to the table to help define your strategy at the outset with product and engineering leadership. These are typically tied to a major industry event, so you might use that as a launch date, like a user conference or the RSA conference. This is where you're going to bring your full toolkit to the table, right? It's the full list of things that you can do. All the arrows in your quiver are going to be pulled out for this one. Tier two is important, but less intense than tier one. These are launches that allow you to maintain a balance with your other responsibilities. You're not going to drop everything else in flight just because you have a tier two launch. You're going to have a similar list of tools or tactics that you can utilize for a tier two launch, but you're only going to have, say, 60% of what you would deploy for a tier one. And you probably should get involved about 60 days out for a tier two launch. So that gives you a few months to plan and get everything in a row and ship key deliverables on time to support the launch, hoping that the date doesn't change, which most of the time it does. All right. Tier three, these are really smaller scale launches. This requires minimal support. I would say if a tier one is 100% and tier two is 60%, a tier three might be 20% of your energy or time invested. These are really just small scale. They're not as insignificant as just a maintenance release or an update in the back end, but it might be a very minor tweak to a module in your software or some type of improvement to an existing feature but it doesn't really have much market impact. It's almost, why weren't we doing this before type conversation. And then this tier is called tier get out of here. And this is when you reserve your right to say, no, I'm not going to get involved because it's so small that if I distract myself from all the other things that I have to do for the business, this maintenance release or back end update is really just something that product marketing shouldn't be getting involved with. So don't even entertain the calls. Don't respond to the group threads. Just really manage your energy accordingly. So if a tier 1 is 100%, a tier 2 is 60, and a tier 3 is 20, we're looking at less than 5% of your energy and time should be spent on a tier get out of here. I hope the name tier get out of here wins me some points out there. Okay, so the third thing you should have, or you should influence as a PMM in these scenarios, is a dedicated launch manager. So this is so critical, and I've noticed this throughout my career. Launches that don't have a launch manager, program manager, project manager, whatever you want to call this person, think of them as the cat herder or the person that's setting up the calls, that is sharing call record. And these days with AI, I'm noticing project managers are just able to record and the notes are automatically sent. It's really not rocket science. It's just somebody has to do it. And that somebody shouldn't be you. Okay. PMM should not get roped into the responsibility of becoming a project manager or program manager for a launch. I've seen that so many times. And what happens in those scenarios is that we burn all of our calories trying to communicate status updates to executives or to other teams. And then everybody starts looking to you for meeting notes or assignments and task updates. And that's just not the world that product marketers should be living in. And so you really need to make sure and insist. I would even go as far as saying, if there's not a dedicated project manager to handle these details, especially in larger, even mid-sized companies, then you probably want to rethink even getting involved, because it's more than likely that this isn't a serious launch. If it was a serious launch, there would be a program manager. So it's almost a filter for you to know, should I support this launch? If there's somebody holding court every week or every 2 weeks and making sure everyone is getting things done, then you know that there are executives that are really serious and intent on this launch being a success, and you probably should pay attention. If there's no launch manager or program manager, that's also a very big warning sign. Okay, if you are managing a portfolio of products, let's say that you have not only you as a PMM, but there are, I don't know, I've seen companies that have 40 plus PMMs around the organization. And this isn't just for the one business. Let's say you work in a cybersecurity unit of a larger company. There might be other product marketers pushing different initiatives that aren't even related to cybersecurity. So in these environments, there is a tactic, a technique that has been very effective that I've seen, which is called marketing moments. And if your organization has multiple products and business units, and there's a lot of internal competition for a smaller set of resources or attention in the market, this solves that problem, because what this does is it creates this planned quarterly announcement by bundling multiple product launches into a unified theme. So instead of random product launches scattered throughout the year, marketing moments help your messaging stand out clearly and strongly. Instead of having a scattershot approach, you just have a few big release themes. Each quarter has one, so that's 4. And you can schedule them a year out, and you can say, these are the 4 themes based on the roadmap plans that we have confirmed with the product and technology teams, and make sure that your entire team is rallied around these themes. And it really does solve a lot of internal conflicts and external awareness issues when your customers are sitting there trying to figure out what exactly is going on at XYZ company. If you really want to implement marketing moments, you can see here on the screen, there is a sample quarterly template or plan that I put together with some make-believe scenarios about wind turbines and other themes. You can use this as an example where it shows how you can have the theme, a message, key activities, etc., in a very simple way that all teams can rally around in the company. So to make your marketing moments effective, First, clearly communicate why the theme matters to customers. Second, align and involve all internal teams early and consistently. And that goes back to the same method as just a product launch. For the marketing moment to succeed, you need to have a program manager that is bringing together everyone and that understands all of the different priorities across different business units. Outlining roles and responsibilities for each person involved is absolutely vital. Regular team status updates, whether you attend live or not, I don't think is as important as long as there is a weekly cadence of some kind where status is added. And however you do that is up to your organization. You can prioritize featured products based on their strategic importance and market potential. So there should be some tiering exercise as well to evaluate how important is this to the business, and always review and learn from each marketing moment to continuously improve. So it requires patience, teamwork, detailed planning, and most importantly, a strong leader in place that is going to stand by the concept. Because what I've noticed is as you try to implement this, there will be a lot of questions. What's the difference between a tier one launch and a marketing moment, right? So people will ask you those questions, and with a leader in place backing it, those questions will be squashed out pretty quickly, making sure that it doesn't get derailed by confusion. So final thoughts here. Just keep in mind that a successful product launch, it's not just about ticking boxes. It involves crafting clear and consistent messaging on the product marketing side, showcasing unique, differentiated strengths and standing out from the competition, and creating compelling stories that your audience deeply cares about. And those are the things that you can control as a product marketer. And every launch is going to be a learning lesson for the organization. Companies get better as they do this and get into a rhythm. Just keep track of what works, identify what doesn't, continuously adapt. And for example, if you go through a launch and the next launch, a program manager comes back to you and says, "Hey, where's this list of deliverables?" And you say, "Yeah, we tried that in the last launch. And based on this measurement and what I saw as effective, we're going to scale back commitment to rows 4, 5, and 6 in that program plan," right? So the goal is just steady improvement, refinement, and each launch should make the next one even better. So that's all I got for today. Hope you enjoyed this episode. Please drop a comment below if you have any insight into this topic as well. See you next time. Well, that does it for this episode of the Cyber PMM podcast. If you found this episode valuable, please subscribe, leave a comment or review, and let's connect on LinkedIn. Be sure to check out cyberpmm.com for more resources. And you can also subscribe to the Cyber PMM newsletter on Substack and LinkedIn to keep up to speed with everything you need to fight digital chaos, cut through the hype, and do more with less. See you next time.